how you explain meditation for someone who never did it before, or it's like first timers are just curious about what it is.
The first thing I would say is there are many, many forms of meditation, and they're not all the same. And I say that first because people hear about meditation. They'll read a magazine article about research on meditation, or some doctor or somebody saying, oh, meditation is good for stress release and all that stuff. And they'll say, oh, I should try to do that. And they think somehow all meditation forms are the same. And then it gets mixed up with mindfulness practice as well. But they're all different. And different practices have different effects, different results. So I would say to people, do your research. Look into the different forms that are available and see what they do, get recommendations, and pick up, practice that will appeal to you. And I would always say, look to forms of meditation that don't require mind control and discipline of trying to silence the mind or control the mind.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because people hear that, they say, oh, meditation quiets the mind, so I'll go sit down and try to quiet my mind. Mind is not, mind doesn't just, you can't command the mind to be quiet. There's methods for that, and the methods that work best are natural and don't require force. There's a place for those kind of practices, but maybe best under supervision. But if you're going to do something on your own day to day, find a qualified teacher. It should not be difficult. It should be we always have this thought that anything worthwhile should be put a lot of effort into it and keep, work hard at it. And that's often true. But for meditation, it's the opposite. And non-effort and relaxation is the important feature. Effortlessness. And so I would say turn to practices like that. That's my advice. And if you ask for a definition, there's a lot of definitions, but it's essentially turning within to the deepest part of yourself, which is always at peace and always at rest and always full.
Beautiful. That's nice. And as far as the commercialization of this knowledge, what are your thoughts on that? Means I see so many meditation schools, yoga, per hour charges.
Oh yeah,
and means
it's Americans have a way of commercializing good things, and sometimes the commercialization, if you call it that, is a good thing because it makes it more available to more people. But it can also distort something and corrupt something and diminish its real value. So you see that a lot in what's happened with yoga. Yoga now is become synonymous with physical fitness and physical, asana practice. And anybody who knows anything about yoga knows it's much more than that. And meditation is a yoga practice, but it got separated out, so people think of stretching and bending as yoga, and with the goal of wellness and physical fitness, which is great, but it's more than that. And the commercialization can lead to the fullness of what yoga has to offer being diminished. And that's unfortunate. It gets diluted. So my feeling is the more people take up yoga and meditation, similar practices, the better. It makes the world a better place. It makes people smarter and healthier and kinder. But let's not trivialize it in the process and reduce it to something small. There's much more to it. So when I meet people who go to yoga classes because they feel healthier doing so, I say, great. If that's all it is to you, fine. But there's more to it. And maybe, someday you want to look into that.
Beautiful. Do you have any daily routine that you follow?
Oh yeah, I have my sadhana. I've been, I have my meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still, what I learned back in the 1960s when I took up transcendental meditation is still effective. I've added things before and after, and modified it with other, nuances. But I have my practice every day, and then sometimes I'll do some other stuff depending on what I feel is my need at that time.
Mm-hmm. Do you consider yourself or identify or plan to write a book called American Hindu?
It's interesting because people ask me why didn't I call it Hinduism in America or something.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is people in the West associate the word Hinduism and Buddhism with religion.
Right.
And one of the important phenomena that happened over the couple of hundred years of these teachings coming here is that it didn't require people to take up Hinduism or Buddhism as a religion.
Mm-hmm.
Dalai Lama always says, for example, these are Buddha. You don't have to be a Buddhist. You can learn from these teachings and be a good Christian or a good Jew or whatever, a good Muslim. And all the gurus who came here did the same. Even the first, Swami Vivekananda, in 1893, when he became well known in his first talks and everything, said, we're not asking Christians to become Hindus or Hindus to become Christians. That's not what this is about. This is becoming a better human being, a fuller human being. And if you can learn from what we have to offer, then take it and integrate it into your life, whatever you are. And so the teachings were presented almost like a science or a technology. It's like, Westerners invented cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Indians picked it up and it became Bollywood.
Correct.
We Americans invented automobiles.
Mm-hmm.
And so everywhere in the world now, there are different manufacturers and different styles of automobiles. And it's very similar in that, when Ravi Shankar, the great sitar master, came here, everybody fell in love with Indian music. They incorporated it into rock and roll and jazz.
Right.
And so it's not dissimilar with the teachings of yoga and the ideas of Vedanta. We adapt it into our own life. So it's not a question of Americans becoming Hindus or Buddhists.
Mm-hmm.
It's a question of these teachings having an effect on different people in different ways. So that's why I try to not use religious language.
Right.
And so similarly, I was raised by atheists.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They were, Jewish by ethnicity, but they did not like religion at all. And so I had no religious upbringing. So when I turned to the teachings from India, it was a spiritual search. It wasn't, I was looking for a religion. And so personally, I've always avoided religious identifications.
Right.
And so, if you look at my life
Mm-hmm.
and what I believe in and what I write about and what my practices are, you'd say, oh, he's more Hindu than most of the people in
Correct.
India.
And that's what my impression, to be
Yeah,
honest
but
with you.
but it's not. I don't see myself as Hindu anymore. Than I'm a Jew or anything else. So like Gandhi used to say, I'm a Hindu and a Buddhist and a Jew and a Muslim and all that. So I learn from all the traditions.
Mm-hmm.
I call myself sometimes jokingly a freelance mystic.
Freelance mystic. I like that.
But I'm drawn to
Uh-huh.
what the world calls Hinduism, and so I'm happy to, teach for Hindu University of America and extol the virtues and go to Hindu temples.
Right.
But I also like going to churches on Christmas Eve. So there's something to be had from all the teachings, and personally, I just sort of resist being limited to a label.
Label. No, that's a beautiful way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Do you have any message for Indian or subcontinent of India?
I don't want to. I'm often reluctant because I don't feel like I should be giving advice to people. I have many Hindu friends in India and in America. Well, one thing I would say, American Veda came out in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
If I were writing it now, I would say more about the presence in America of Hindus.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to the change in immigration laws in the 1960s, there were very few, there weren't many citizens of America who were Indian or Hindu descent. And now there are many.
Mm-hmm.
And now there are temples everywhere. You told me there's a temple in Nashua, New Hampshire.
Right.
I didn't even know that. I remember when the first temples went up. So Americans now are exposed, and of course, people like you and your parents' generation, children's generation. These are now people born in America as American. I mean, look, the person running for president,
Right.
her mother was an immigrant from India. She was born here. Hindus are on television all the time, and running companies and teaching in universities and treating patients in hospitals. So they're part of the fabric of America now, just as in the past, Catholics became part of the fabric of America and Jews became fabric. We were newcomers,
Right.
people like that, and now they're part of the culture. Hindus are now part of the culture. And that has a transformative impact on ordinary Americans.
Mm-hmm.
How many Americans go to school, kids go to school, they don't know what Hinduism is. They learn something in a textbook, and it's often inaccurate.
Right.
It's often
Right.
misleading. But then they have a Hindu classmate,
Mm-hmm.
or they date a Hindu in high school, or whatever it is. The president of the class is a Hindu kid. They learn. They understand it better, and that has a good effect on those people. So the presence of Hindus in America is now an important part of the story I told in American Veda as time goes by. What I would say to Hindu people here and in India is, don't disregard the ancient teachings because you want to be a modern person. They're relevant. The teachings are relevant to a modern life. That's what Americans discovered, and it's changed the country for the better. It's changed Americans for the better. There's value in it. It just has to be applied perhaps in a different way now than it was in the past, because circumstances change. But the great thing about the traditional teachings is they've been changed many, many times over the course of hundreds and thousands of years.
Right.
They adapt they're universally true.
Mm-hmm.
They're true and valuable, and so they would apply at different times in different places. And people will use them and adapt them to their own lives in their own way. And if your Hinduism, what you get from the teachings of the rishis, you may apply different from the way your parents and grandparents did,
Mm-hmm.
because you're living a different life.
Correct.
Uh, but don't disregard them as
Right.
old-fashioned.
Beautiful. That's a very nicely you put it together. As far as writing is concerned, do you think it's a inborn gift or you can develop it as a skill?
It's both.
So,
Um, some people, I just have an inclination to write. I'm one of them. I have, it's just what I like doing, and at a certain point, I discover I can do it well, and I have the patience and the personality to sit there for long periods of time and mess around with words and make changes and edit. Not everybody has that inclination. And you can refine your skill. It's like, look, some people have a gift for music.
correct.
And they pick up an instrument and they turn out to be good at it. But they keep practicing and they keep studying and they keep getting better at it.
Right.
Same with writing.
Beautiful. Nice. So after American Veda, what is next in your entourage?
I have books followed American Veda. I'm working on, okay, I'm going to say this. I try to keep what I'm working on quiet because you never know what's going to happen. But I'm working on a book about karma.
Oh.
And what it is and how it's misunderstood and how proper understanding can help our lives. And I'm working on a novel that means a lot to me because it's based on my own family story and my life in the days you asked me about when I first became interested in India and India's philosophy. So it's a personal story, but it's fiction, and I'm working on that now.
Beautiful. Do you have any thoughts on Indian rituals specifically?
I like, at first, the only ritual I was interested in was my own meditation, and doing it regularly. But then going to India and then temples arising here and different forms of practices becoming accessible to us. I like kirtan, and I like certain things that go on in certain temples that, when I'm in the right mood. And as I say, I like other religious rituals too. I love Christmas music, and I was not raised Christian, but I think it's great. I think of it as a birthday party for a great yogi,
Right.
And so I enjoy and I get something out of, from time to time, what we think of as religious rituals. But I also know that going for a walk in the woods or along the river here where I live, it's not the Ganges.
Right.
But if I think of it in the right way, it's as holy as the Ganges. So those are rituals too.
Beautiful. So you very interestingly mentioned Ganges, and we call it Ganga.
Ganga.
So who was the person who did this Ganga to Ganges?
I have no idea.
No idea. But I think most of the literature, you see that word. And when I read it first time, I was like, what is this? And then I realized, oh no, they call Ganga Ganges.
Yeah, maybe it was the Brits, maybe it was the Persians. I have no idea. I mean, there's, a lot of the cities in India have gone changed their names
Right,
to
right.
get rid of the colonial
Yes.
influence.
Yes.
And some of them, you can see, okay, the Brits mispronounced Mumbai and it became Bombay, or something like that might have happened. But how Madras became Chennai, I have no idea. So, I'm sure there are scholars who know how these things took place.
Right. Yeah, no, it's just interesting the way West has certain terminologies towards this.
But when you read, for example, Henry David Thoreau's
Mhm.
works that he wrote in the mid 19th century, he uses the word Ganges. So it must have been what was in English translations of things or English language writings about India.
Right.
So I don't know when it started.
I think he was a resident of Massachusetts.
Yes,
Yeah.
near outside of Boston, he and Emerson.
Yes, I was exposed to his work on solitude,
Yes.
and the way he puts it, beautiful. Very, as you said, very close to Vedantic way of looking.
Oh yeah, he read the first translation of the Gita every morning when he was at Walden Pond.
Right. And but one nuance to it is, a lot of people say that the teaching of Vedanta are good when you say it as a theory, but when it comes to practice, it's difficult, or it's sounds like a philosophy. Do you?
Most of what we understand as Vedanta is Vedanta philosophy because that was what the Swamis brought to us.
Mhm.
But there's practices. There are practices rooted in Vedanta, and a lot of overlap between Vedanta and yoga and tantric traditions.
Mhm.
The gurus were very practical people. They just used whatever worked.
Yeah.
So there are Vedanta scholars who are mostly about philosophy,
Mhm.
but the Swamis in Vivekananda's lineage and others, they be very learned about Vedanta, but they'll also have practices rooted in those ideas, and they may come from the yoga tradition or tantra or whatever. But different lineages have their own sadhanas.
Correct. I think the sadhana itself, we divide that word as a sadhana, which kind of a property that you take goes with you in simple translation. And I'm so happy that you use that word like
Well,
so frequently.
if you were an American journalist, I would not have used it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course, because he wouldn't know what I was talking about. So I would
Right.
just say, spiritual practice.
Spiritual practice, right? Beautiful. Any suggestion for spiritual seeker?
If you're a spiritual seeker, if you identify with the term spiritual seeker, you're already on the path.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep searching and use your discernment. Use your intellect. Use your intuition. Get good teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And don't settle.
Don't settle.
Don't settle for convenience teachings. Keep thinking, keep searching, keep finding more answers. That's what we're all here for.
Have you settled?
No, I'm always looking for new ideas and new teachings, and new understandings.
Beautiful.
But at the same time, when something really is convincing and works, and it proves its value, I stick to it. But then if something changes, I have to be open-minded.
Right. That's a really good approach. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Your insights are pretty valuable.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
And your perspective is very distinctive. So Thank you again, and my best wishes for many books like these to
Okay,
come.
let's hope I live long enough to have many more.
Thank you.
Thank you.